Hello and welcome to the Konvergent Video Series for the week of October 2nd. Top 3 things we're going to cover on the video this week. First, the markets were down big last week on election uncertainty. 2, we're going to talk about a lot of economic data that was actually positive on the week. And finally, we're going to touch on the elections and all the uncertainty around the elections and the headlines driving that. But before we jump into the data for the week, I hope you all had a great weekend. In spite of COVID, we were able still to pull off a really nice, fun Halloween trick-or-treat weekend with the girls. We went out around the neighborhood. Still, a few houses went all in and did some really cool decorations, and so we were able to safely do some fun trick-or-treating on the weekend. And also, Lila, my oldest daughter, got really inspired to do some baking, so she wanted to make a cake that was shaped or at least decorated like a skull of a skeleton. And so she really did it from scratch. It was awesome. She made the batter from scratch, the buttercream from scratch, and even rolled out some fondant and put that over the cake and did some decorating on that. So it was just a fun overall weekend with the kids. So I hope you had a good weekend as well. But let's jump into the data. So, big week last week with the market down around 6% on the S&P 500, and it really came from a lot of different directions. So we had, rising COVID cases across the globe. We had, a lot of uncertainty around stimulus, and finally knowing now that it's not likely coming until after the election, and finally just the uncertainty around the election itself. And so we're going to touch on all of that in a bit more detail later in the video. So just a big week down on the market that we've kind of been anticipating for the last couple of months would likely be coming. On the economic data front, though, we actually had a pretty good week of numbers overall. New claims for unemployment were down to about 750,000, although we still had around 350,000 of the pandemic new claims for unemployment. So still overall about 1.1 million new claims for unemployment. On the continuing claims number, we dropped to below 8 million, which looks pretty good. However, we're still uncertain whether that's more due to these state programs having their eligibility run out, or whether we're really seeing a big improvement in the jobs picture. And we also see that in the total claims, which now are below 23 million. And so again, the biggest drop in there was those state claims, dropping close to 1 million. However, we did have a rise of about 500,000 of the emergency pandemic claims, which is the replacement program for those state claims. And so, overall, some of mixed results overall on the jobs numbers. And we'll know a lot more later this week. On Friday, we get the October jobs number, so we'll have a better sense of really where jobs are headed. And then the big headline for the week on the economy was the GDP report. So it was up over 33% growth on an annualized basis in the third quarter, which sounds really good. It was the best print ever. However, it was coming off of the worst quarter ever in Q2. And so we really needed to see a number like that. However, if we look at kind of the pace of where things were headed earlier in the year, what you'll see is we're still well below the pace of growth that we were on at the beginning of 2020. So still a lot of room that we need to improve upon to get back to the levels of growth we were seeing prior to the pandemic. So, on to the election. By the time you're seeing this video, it'll probably be election day. And so, finally here. We've been anticipating this for a long time, and a lot of that volatility we were expecting to come around the election is here, and a lot of good reasons for that. The pandemic, we're seeing the largest rise in cases in the U.S. as well as around the globe, and we're starting to see countries and areas begin to do much stronger lockdown measures, which is impacting some people's concerns around the growth that we're, maybe stunting from what we've seen on the rise in Q3. Also, the stimulus deal that we were all anticipating since July, it's been over 3 months since the last deal basically expired in terms of the benefits. And finally, this last week, it became pretty certain that no deal was coming prior to the election, with the Senate adjourning until later this month after they completed the confirmation for the Supreme Court for Amy Coney Barrett. And then finally, just the election uncertainty in itself. So, in spite of Joe Biden being pretty far ahead in the polls overall, I think there's still a hangover from what happened in 2016, where the polls, were just wrong enough on the state level to create, a surprise win for President Trump. And so I think a lot of people are still concerned in those battleground states whether we'll see something similar again this year. And even if there is a winner that's going to be clear after the initial part of the election, it still may not come for days, if not weeks, just because of some of the states that have the mail-in ballot delays. And then, a big part of that concern is, whether there'll be a contested election overall. Will it be close enough that each side is unwilling to concede? And so the market in that scenario would be highly volatile. So, bottom line, given the COVID cases on the rise, given the lack of a stimulus deal, and just given some of the level of concern about a contested, or at least an election that'll take days, if not weeks, to fully settle, there's still a lot of potential volatility that we see in the market, so we're still taking a cautious tone at this point. However, once we do have some level of certainty on what the situation will look like president-wise, Senate, and House, we do expect that there likely could be a good bounce in the market. because the market does like some level of certainty. But until then, we're going to play this cautious tone. So with that, if you have any individual questions on your situation, please feel free to reach out and give us a call. Otherwise, we hope you have a great week. Stay safe. Hang in there. It's going to be a crazy week, but we look forward to talking to you soon.